Hi there. Greetings and salutations, everyone. Stealthryche here. I'm going to do something
There's a very big problem when it
Try
comes
this
to
out.
space games, and it's been here for decades at this point. Although, ironically enough, it seems that it was almost solved back in the 90s. That said, space games have always promised us the final frontier, entire galaxies to roam, alien worlds to discover, and the thrill of futuristic adventure. Titles like Elite Dangerous, Star Citizen, No Man's Sky, X4 Foundation, Starfield, and many more all strive to capture the scale and grandeur of space, specifically exploration in space. Each of these has certainly delivered some more inspiring moments, yet they all have one common problem that threads through each of them, and that is what to do and how to display the grandeur of space, but not only that, provide an interesting game with it. You either go large and become dull or boring, or you go very interesting and detailed, but you lose the grandeur. So, why is it so hard to translate the grandeur of screen sci-fi into an interactive experience? The answer perhaps lies in how gameplay mechanics and environmental design collide, sometimes literally, with the sheer emptiness of the enormity of space. In other words, empty space can sometimes be a little bit of a problem when it comes to playing in a game. When it comes to that, the overall lure and challenge of scale is a thing that space games certainly get right. Space is big, mind-bogglingly big, and these games don't shy away from that. Elite Dangerous famously takes place in a full one-to-one recreation of the Milky Way with some 400 billion star systems. The play space.
Shout out to the original author of this video, Obsidian Ant. Well, go ahead and give him a like, check out the video. We'll continue.
This is so vast that it's been said it would take players 30,000 years to chart all of it. No Man's Sky. Now, Elite Dangerous certainly excels at conveying the enormity of celestial objects. You only have to get near a planet or a star or any other stellar object, and you'll find yourself dwarfed by ringed gas giants and blazing suns. And this gives somewhat of a profound feeling of being tiny, or being very tiny, in an endless void. In fact, quite often in my exploration journeys in Elite Dangerous, I found that moment of quiet awe of floating in the shadow of a planet. And it really was magical. It delivered a sense of scale that, felt quite unlike anything else. And considering that this is an experience from a video game, it turned out to be quite humbling and, largely profound. It can be very similar to the kind of jaw-dropping spectacle we get from a well-crafted sci-fi film, specific scenes that we've probably all experienced and seen. Yet scale here is certainly a double-edged sword when it comes to video games. As the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy famously put it, space is big, but we connect to that, space is empty. Now, by attempting to capture space's size, games risk capturing its emptiness too, and this has been a problem specifically for Elite Dangerous, but other games as well, they kind of miss this, they kind of butt up against the wall here. It's a major complaint across the genre, and these massive worlds can feel empty, static, and lifeless. In other words, if you simulate space too realistically, well, that realistic scale can undermine the gameplay. And here, developers are really tasked with finding ways to fill the void with things to do, or risk players becoming bored drifting through the dead wasteland. If any game embodies both the wonder and the pitfalls of both of a realistic scale, it's Elite Dangerous. On the one hand, Elite nails the feeling of a vast frontier. Its galaxy is incredible, it's immersive, and, in a scientific sense, stars have proper spectral classes, planets orbit in real time, and distances are so enormous that faster than light travel via the game's frameshift drive is absolutely mandatory. When you're out exploring in Elite, you feel truly alone in the darkness. In fact, it's a little wonder that so many players call it going into the black. And more often than not, you'll find yourself experiencing those quiet moments, coasting above an undiscovered planet or hanging at the edge of a nebula, and can feel something very much out of 2001: A Space Odyssey. The game's community here has countless screenshots and loads of gorgeous videos telling the tales of first discoveries and some truly amazing scenes. However, Elite Dangerous has also become the poster child for the well-wide and deep problem. This is something that you don't have to go to online to actually see a quote that's all over the internet these days in regards to the game. Elite's Galaxy, for all its size, can often feel procedurally generated and devoid of meaningful interaction. And yes, some people argue that's probably what space is really like, although none of us can know for sure because no one's been out there that far. Nonetheless, science seems to suggest that is very likely the case. As a design that speaks to the game's reliance on player imagination and emergent gameplay to create the content. There are no scripted campaigns with cutscenes or characters, aside from some text-based narrative events. Missions are mostly randomly generated and repetitive, very similar to goods, hunter pirates, scan a planet, like the stuff of epic space opera. In short, venture too far out of the inhabited areas of Elite Dangerous' galaxy and will soon end up feeling very lonely, and for some people this may lead to a sense of aimlessness. And here, players often speak of it being the best space thing out there in theory, yet never taking that next big step. The game, it could have been. How many of you have heard of people talking about Elite's potential? Now, Frontier Development has made efforts to deepen Elite Dangerous over time, for example, adding on foot exploration in the Odyssey expansion, and then, more recently, adding the ability to colonize close-by star systems. But without strong narrative or dynamic ecosystems, the amazing scale of Elite sometimes ends up highlighting vast stretches of nothing. In a film or TV episode, a spaceship crew might fill a downtime with dialogue or encounter a plot event every few minutes. In Elite, you might literally be using the super cruise for 10 minutes real time or much longer depending on where you're going to reach that space station. And with very little to do but look at the pretty stars and nothing much besides. It's a game design philosophy that has really led to Elite violating the 42nd rule of open world design. The idea that the player should find something interesting roughly every 40 seconds whilst travelling. Now, of course, space is big. You don't really expect to find something every 40 seconds, but this really comes down to the point I opened with, that tension, that area of overlap between having a vast area and, also bringing in gameplay to match it. In Elite, minutes, half hour, more can sometimes go by in sterile silence. That's great for immersion and realism, but not great for entertainment. The result is that Elite Dangerous conveys the emptiness of space a bit too well. It captures the feel of floating in a serene and different void, but struggles to deliver the lively narrative atmosphere of Star Wars or Star Trek, or indeed pretty much any sci-fi opera novel. Now, Elite Dangerous is one end of the spectrum, that's a massive finished game making depth. Star Citizen is arguably the other. A still in development game, bursting with depth and detail in a much smaller slice of space. Star Citizen's ambition, of course, is legendary at this point, probably infamous, is being perfectly blunt about it. It aims to simulate a living sci-fi universe at an unprecedented level of detail. In many ways, it's trying to be the cure for Elite's shortcomings. Want to get out of your pilot's chair and walk around your ship's interior? In Star Citizen, you can. Every multi-deck ship is fully modelled right down to the crew quarters and engineering bays. Want to land on a planet and stroll through a bustling city, and then take off again seamlessly? Star Citizen lets you do that, at least in the two Star Systems currently available. The game places very heavy emphasis on immersion, from detailed cockpits with full functional buttons to the act of physically getting out of your bed in your habitat when you log in. It's the kind of first-person who are there experience that makes you feel like a character in the Expanse or Firefly. However, Star Citizen's weakness, let's discount its bugs for the moment and many other areas there, but in terms of Star Citizen itself as it's intended, after you've its weakness is that after you've finished in and firing at the sites, you might ask, what now? As of 2025, the game remains in alpha and content is limited. Outside of some basic missions, such as bounty hunting, delivery runs, combat skirmishes, as well as, of course, the now famous player-driven antics, there's very little to do beyond the look at it, or get involved in very simple gameplay loops that become all too repetitive very quickly. In its current state, Star Citizen is an immersion sandbox, a stunning toy universe without the structured adventures that make something like Star Wars exciting. Now, the developers have an entire single-player campaign here lined up, Squadron 42, which may be here this year, maybe here next year, maybe the year after. But until it's released, players are basically all playing their own stories in Star Citizen as it stands right now. Now, of course, that is an achievement, but it's worth noticing that Star Citizen does address some nuances of space travel and environment that help with immersion. For example, travel times between planets or moons in the solar system is tantalus. You engage quantum drive and watch your ship cruise for minutes, not just a loading screen, and this creates anticipation and gives a sense of distance. What's more, you can get up out of your ship's seat and engage in other activities around your ship, maybe with other players or friends whilst this happens. You might even get pulled out of quantum by a pirate ambush, not too dissimilar to interdictions in Elite Dangerous, and this, of course, is a dynamic event that breaks up travel. The game also populates its world with NPC ships, space stations, and out on planets, making the environment feel less static than at least. The worlds here are very, very nice, arguably the best worlds in any sci-fi game. You'll find forests, snowy areas, mountains, abandoned bases, cave systems, oceans, and much, much more. But despite these efforts, many players still report a feeling of emptiness. There's a difference between looking alive and being alive. Star Citizen's universe looks like a bustling sci-fi setting. Neon cityscapes on hardcore, crowded landing pads at Thurston, yet much of it is window dressing. I don't think there's any argument there. The impressive city planet you see largely is an uninteractive backdrop, beyond the small landing zone that you can walk in. The NPCs are mostly inert when they're not standing on tables, and without a narrative or meaningful economic simulation, the grand illusion can feel hollow. To its credit, Star Citizen's developers, CIG, have plans to fill this with content, alien races, dynamic trading, more star systems, evolving storylines. But the game's protracted development, to understate it, means that the cinematic moments players crave are still mostly aspirational. Right now, Star Citizen offers the feel of stepping into a Star Wars film, but it doesn't yet deliver a Star Wars caliber experience. It's an immersive tech demo growing into a game. So, like Elite, it nails atmosphere in a realistic sense, yet struggles to constantly evoke the emotional atmosphere of a great sci-fi world. And then there's No Man's Sky, which took a very different approach to space exploration. Instead of aiming for hardcore realism or multiplayer immersion, Hello Games went for procedural abundance. Billions upon billions of planets, each teeming with weird life forms, all generated by algorithms. No Man's Sky launch famously promised to go anywhere no one has gone before, to literally be the first to step on foot of a countless alien worlds. In terms of scale, the game succeeded. Its universe is effectively infinite for a single-player purpose, and on day one it did an excellent job of seamless transition from space down to atmosphere all the way down to ground. Its colour-saturated art style also gave it a distinct, almost dreamlike atmosphere, closer to a 1970s sci-fi novel cover compared to the hard vacuum realism of Elite. Over the years, No Man's Sky has evolved into a rich sandbox. It's introduced base building, story quests, multiplayer, and many new features. By 2025, it's arguably one of the most improved space games of all time, and having won back players with multiple free updates. Still, when it comes to conveying the feel of true exploration, No Man's Sky has its own challenges. The very procedural generation that enables its vast scale also creates a sense of deja vu. Players often find that after the first dozen hours, planets start to blur together. You begin to recognise the jigsaw pieces. The game uses still of this to assemble creatures and landscapes, and even with the various different recent updates, Worlds Part 1 and Worlds Part 2, this still is a bit of a problem. It highlights a core issue. When discovery becomes routine, that magical sense of wonder fades. The game begins to feel more like touring variations of the same theme, rather than discovering truly unique frontiers. Of course, to be perfectly fair here, No Man's Sky does a lot right. It provides accessible exploration with a chill vibe, and it has gradually added more curated content. These all help offset the procedural monotony by injecting a bit of narrative and lore, yet some players still echo the sentiment that No Man's Sky isn't a real space exploration game, at least not in the Star Trek sense. In other words, No Man's Sky errs on the side of a busy universe. Every star system has a space station. Every planet has some idiot outpost or ancient ruin. This design ensures that the player always has something to interact with, but also paradoxically undermines the feeling of being a lone explorer. Unlike Elite, where you often truly find empty worlds and empty star systems, No Man's Sky populates virtually everything. Some fans actually crave a bit more emptiness for realism. Barren star systems rare alike to make their own discoveries feel more special. The game does have lifeless planets and extreme worlds, but the complaint here is that meaningful solitude is very hard to master. The contrast between Elite Dangerous and No Man's Sky on this point is very telling. They give you a to make their own discoveries feel something special. No Man's Sky does have constant flights of interest in extreme worlds, but the complaint here is that this here solitude does get into the contrast between Elite Dangerous and No Man's Sky is No Man's Sky has a more cinematic vibe at times than the pure simulation-based games. Its vibrant planets and orchestrated music can really make flying over a planet or warping between systems feel like a montage from a sci-fi trailer. Ultimately, No Man's Sky succeeds in making its space exploration relaxing and visually intriguing, but it often fails to deliver the dramatic tension or deep curiosity that true exploration fiction inspires. The gameplay loop can slide into repetitive resource gathering and checklist objectives. Scan 10 animals, fix the ship, get the fuel, repeat. And ultimately, to me at least, this runs counter to what I'd like to see in a deep exploration game. Moving on to X4 Foundations, we encounter a very different kind of space game, one that prioritises simulation of a living economy of factions over sheer size. Egosoft's X series has always been about depth over breadth. X4's universe is relatively small, a few dozen star sectors connected by some gates not into a galaxy. It's densely packed with NPCs, ships, stations, trade routes, and conflicts therein. In X4, you can build your own empire, construct stations, command fleets, influence wars between factions. In essence, it tries to deliver the feeling of a living, breathing universe, but on a manageable scale.
Okay, this is the first random test. This is Stealth.